The White House is now coming for you. For your memes? The state will do everything in its power to maintain control of their various narratives and their control over you, even if that means imprisonment for satirical memes. How the is this possible? As an obvious violation of the First Amendment? Let's dive in and see what the hell is going on and how Bitcoin fixes this.
Just a week after the presidential inauguration in January of 2021, Biden's FBI arrested a 31-year-old man from Vermont called Douglas Mackey. Now, according to the DOJ, in the charging documents, Mackey's crime was making fun of Hillary Clinton on the internet. 4 years before he was arrested, Mackey made an internet meme joking that it was possible to vote for Hillary Clinton by text message. Not a single person in America, and DOJ has not shown differently, believed that Mackey was serious or that you could vote for Hillary by text message. He wasn't subverting democracy, he was calling Hillary voters stupid. And the DOJ knows that, every person knows that. Jokes are not crimes. But the Biden administration is trying to send Douglas Mackey to prison for years. We've been trying for a year to speak to one of his lawyers because this is one of the great outrages of this story. James Lawrence is one of Douglas Mackey's lawyers, and we're happy to have him on tonight. Mr. Lawrence, thank you so much for coming on. This is such an obvious violation of the First Amendment. This is so clearly totalitarian. How did it get to this point in the court system?
And as we've argued in court filings, we believe that this prosecution represents a significant escalation of the government's regulation of speech under the banner of policing so-called disinformation. And Tucker, really, you were one of the first public figures and one of the most prominent people to criticize Twitter for deplatforming people over so-called disinformation. But I don't think even you would have thought that someone would face a federal prosecution or potential jail time over alleged memes. Now, here's what's at issue. The government says that this case is about voting rights, but as we've argued, the government has not alleged that a single person didn't vote as a result of the alleged memes. So we think that this case goes to the core of the First Amendment, and really, regardless of what you think about the content at issue, everyone in this country, Tucker, left, right, center, and every political persuasion in between should be concerned about what's happening in this case.
It's obvious that the establishment in Washington and elsewhere does not value national sovereignty or individualism and are taking their marching orders from corrupt foreign entities. I wonder who has been pushing for global sedition acts. None other than the WEF and Klausy boy. Go figure. So the state is promoting this destruction of the First Amendment. Why? To stifle dissent, to silence the truth, and maintain their illusion of control. The WEF remains hell-bent on the march towards 1984. Klaus and the gang seek to shut down what they deem wrongthink. They want to do so by using hired goons and artificial intelligence. These statists aim to erase dissent and strike a final blow to free speech online. If there were a group of people to oust and ostracize from holding any political office and to try under the Espionage Act, it would be any of those affiliated with the unelected authoritarian WEF. Let's consider who has been consistently wrong over the past 2 years. Then think of the untold damage from the misinformation shared via the state, mainstream media, central bankers, and WEF scrubs around the globe. Unfortunately, this damage is becoming more and more visible by the day, with the true arbiters of misinformation invoking ever more draconian measures to cover up their growing pile of lies. These people don't care about freedom, they don't care about you, and the hive mind of the internet is their greatest adversary. But as it turns out, the toxic Bitcoiners, independent media, Austrian economists, and freedom-minded individuals all over the globe out-researched, outperformed, and took the so-called experts to school. If implemented, the WEF wrongthink police would be the enforcers of what equates to sedition acts worldwide. What were the sedition acts? Well, it only took a couple years after George Washington for the Bill of Rights to come under attack with John Adams and the Sedition Acts. In 1798, fear spread of imminent French invasion, which led the Adams administration to pass 4 laws, including the Sedition Acts. This act outlawed any false, scandalous, and malicious writing against Adams and the Congress. Also included in the law, it forbid conspiring, quote, to oppose any measure or measures of the government. Good old Honest Abe Lincoln also did this later in the North during the Civil War and suspended habeas corpus in the North. If they can create enough panic and instill enough fear, they will get enough people to support their fear campaign and erasure of inherent freedoms. Adams and Lincoln aren't alone in their suspension of the First Amendment. Arguably the worst president in history, Woodrow Wilson, put the rest to shame. Wilson just so happened to preside over the creation of the Federal Reserve, the income tax, and the League of Nations. In addition, Wilson instituted the Espionage Act and the Sedition Acts during World War I. Statists haven't let a good crisis go to waste since 1914. The Espionage Act, passed in 1917, with the Sedition Act of 1918 added as an amendment to expand and further limit free speech, of course. In the middle of World War I, Wilson, legislative leaders, and influential newspapers pushed for the Sedition Act. Kind of reminds me of a certain push for something over the past 2 years. Wilson was worried about the country's morale and wanted to crack down on the rising dissatisfaction with the war and the draft. They stifled dissent and political opponents that challenged their power and authority. The acts were struck down in 1920, but the Espionage Act was used recently against one of the most outstanding journalists of this era, Julian Assange. The state intends to combine the best features of human censorship AI algorithms to guarantee that people's feelings are not wounded and that viewpoints opposed to the state are banned. They will violate your right to free expression even before it has a chance to be published on social networking websites. Let's call it preemptive censorship. Trust and safety teams can halt risks emerging online before they reach people, is how the WEF puts it. Given that the WEF is renowned for banning its opponents on Twitter, there is no question that a prominent component of such misinformation will be vehement criticism of the WEF itself. Interesting, the WEF's concern with this initiative, given the current economic climate, including the cost of living, impending energy rationing, and a worldwide recession. Good old Schwab believes there is a possible lethal internet infodemic that needs a treatment. According to News Punch, misinformation is anything which the WEF disagrees. Information warriors will shut down dissent and contain, quote, infodemics. Everything that defies the official statist narratives on topics like the past 3 years of bullshit, green energy, inflation, constitutional violations, Bitcoin, or socialism, for example, is an infodemic that must be eradicated. And just wonderful, the UN's verified and hashtag pledge to pause initiatives come in collaboration with some excellent sponsors. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, Bloomberg Philanthropies, the World Health Organization, the Rockefeller Foundation, the Chan Zuckerberg Initiative, and Google. Wow. Since 2019, the UN has partnered with the WEF on 6 priority areas, including, quote, digital collaboration. The slow, steady eradication of individual liberty is what, quote, building back better looks like. The truth is that those seeking to stifle speech and create this dystopia are the largest propagandists and spreaders of misinformation. Think about it. If their ideas had any merit, they wouldn't have to stifle opposition for them to be supported and maintain power. If these people cared about you, they wouldn't aim for you to own nothing and be happy. If your nation were sovereign, it wouldn't take and implement orders from an unelected cabal of self-proclaimed elites. If people in places of influence and power were in a little black book, why aren't they in custody or being held accountable? If these people are the intellectual elite, the best and brightest, why have they been wrong? And why did they seek to eliminate freedoms to cover up their own mistakes? If they sought monetary inclusion, why have they constantly stolen your time and value through currency debasement? If they were for preserving the truth, why are they targeting the ones who were correct and not themselves? They aim for us to live in a one-sided world. Those type of societies, you can prepare for a whole world of hurt. We've seen governments plunder their own citizens throughout history, and we can see it today in the USA and abroad through the invisible tax of inflation and the plunder of citizens' natural rights. With this ability to plunder, then comes the ability to decide who gets plundered. Throughout history, those who have voiced opinions not liked by the state have been silenced, while those politically connected are allowed a free pass. Animal farm anyone, and are exempt from the laws that the rest of the citizenry have to abide by. As the great philosopher Frederick Bastiat said, quote, When plunder becomes a way of life for a group of men in society, over the course of time they create for themselves a legal system that authorizes it and a moral code that glorifies it. As our liberties erode and we see our brothers and sisters from other nations suffering, Lebanon, Sri Lanka, Australia, Israel, Canada, France, despite all of this, there is hope in Bitcoin. Take a look at El Salvador passing and fully integrating its Bitcoin as legal tender law in the face of the WEF and the IMF, the central planners that like to hold economies hostage. Now you may ask yourself, in the face of all this madness, why did this little nation turn to Bitcoin? It's simple. Freedom. All currencies leading to full fiat in 1971 and eventually culminating in the impending issuance of central bank digital currencies sought after by the UN and WEF, which will be used to fully implement behavioral economics and a social credit system similar to that of the CCP. These centralized systems can and will be used politically by the state. The antithesis to all of this bullshit is Bitcoin. There is no central figure, company, person, government, corporation, political action committee, three-letter agency, religious group, or anything else in control or with the ability to control Bitcoin. It is the only purely decentralized and absolutely scarce asset on this planet. Bitcoin is a decentralized international monetary network that favors no one, is controlled by no one, and is open to everyone. I mean, Tucker gets it. The society we live in is one in which we have rules that apply to some, but not the ruling class. Bitcoin is a system with rules and no rulers. Make the WEF irrelevant and take back your freedom. People want their sovereignty, and taking part in the peaceful revolution that is Bitcoin is one way to do it. That, or we can continue to allow these fucking losers to dictate our futures and funnel bugs down our throat. Tell them, Tucker.
Time to check in with our lizard overlords in Davos, Switzerland. What are they up to? Well, this. Yeah, those people run the world. They're so impressive. What a bunch of freaks.